So I stayed in three different cities: Boston, which is in East Coast, and New Orleans, which in the south of the U.S., and Washington, D.C., which is also on the East Coast. So these are very different cities, but Boston and Washington, D.C. have a lot in common because they are both very urban, and they're not big cities, but they're small cities, but still urban. And I really enjoyed staying in Boston because of its convenience. Both Boston and Washington, D.C. have pretty good public transportation system, and getting from point A to point B within the city is not a problem. So even if you don't have a car, it's really easy to get around in Boston and Washington, D.C. And Boston has also an adjacent city called Cambridge, and there's a lot of nice coffee shops, movie theaters, bars and clubs where you could go. So in terms of entertainment, Boston has a lot to offer. And so does Washington, D.C., but places tend to close earlier in Washington, D.C., and because a lot of places are open for people who work in D.C., and a lot of people live outside D.C. D.C. is a very small city. So yeah, Boston and D.C. have a lot in common, and they're both really convenient to get around. So if you like a city, if you would like to live in a city, but not one that's too big like New York or Chicago, I would definitely recommend Boston and Washington, D.C. But I do prefer Washington to Boston. It's because Boston gets really, really cold in winter. And also people aren't that friendly. I think it's because of the weather. But in Washington, D.C., a lot of people are really friendly, and networking is a part of Washington, D.C. culture. So people are really open to talk to you. If you see a stranger on the street, you could say hi. It's a small, you get a small town feel in Washington, D.C., which I like sometimes. And New Orleans, in contrast, is a very different city. It's in the south of the United States. It's in the state of Louisiana. And it's an old city. And even though it is a city, it's not very urban. And if you go uptown, it's a beautiful city. There's a street called St. Charles Avenue. There's a lot of colonial style, amazing looking houses. There's lots of trees, lots of nice go out areas such as bars everywhere. And there's a huge culture of embracing live music, partying, and festivals. So if you like that kind of environment, New Orleans is one of the kind city in the world. And I was very lucky to have lived in New Orleans, and people were so relaxed, and the city has a sense of unity because the city went through Hurricane Katrina in 2005, and everybody loves the city, and everybody wants the city to be, prosperous again. So there was a sense of unity. Even if you go to a university, what I liked about it was that everyone loved New Orleans. So not only was there a sense of identity as a college student for a particular school, there's another identity within every student that they were part of the city. So if you like a small town vibe, a kind of small town feel but urban area, you could go to Boston or Washington, D.C., or some other smaller cities like San Francisco, maybe. But if you would like to experience a very unique culture and a very relaxed environment, I would recommend New Orleans highly.